I destroyed my marriage in the most polite way possible, in front of both our families, over a plate of barbecue ribs, and I don't regret a single second of it. For 6 years, I thought I was living the kind of life people quietly envy. I was 32. My wife, Emily, was 31. We had a 5-year-old boy, Mason, who had my whole heart wrapped around his little finger. The house wasn't fancy, but it was ours. The job was stable. The weekends were filled with small routines that felt like proof that we were doing something right. Mason used to do this thing where he'd run at me full speed like a tiny linebacker the moment I walked through the door. He'd slam into my legs, laugh like he'd won, and demand I pick him up, and I always did, every time, because that was my kid. That was my son. That was my purpose in a small, loud body with sticky fingers and a gap-toothed grin. Emily and I weren't perfect, but I never doubted her. Not even once. She was the organized one, the planner. The kind of person who remembered birthdays, who made sure the pantry was stocked, who took pictures of the little moments. She seemed dependable, safe, and I was proud of myself, honestly. I came from a messy home. I promised myself I'd build something clean and solid. Something Mason would never have to recover from. Then one random Tuesday I went to donate blood. It wasn't some big noble decision. My company did a blood drive in the parking lot with a big red bus, and there was a sign-up sheet taped to the break room wall. A coworker joked that it was an easy way to get out of a meeting and score a free cookie. I signed up like it was nothing. Inside, the bus smelled like antiseptic and those thin plastic-wrapped blankets. A nurse asked me the usual questions. Had I traveled? Had I gotten tattoos? Did I feel healthy? She took my blood pressure, pricked my finger, and wrote things down on a clipboard like my body was paperwork. I remember feeling weirdly proud when the bag started filling, like I'd done something useful without it costing me much. I texted Emily a picture of the stupid "I donated" sticker they gave me. She sent back a heart emoji and told me to drink water. That should have been the end of it. A week later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number while I was making coffee. I almost ignored it, but something in me picked up anyway. A woman introduced herself as calling from the blood donation center. Her tone was careful, professional. Not urgent, but not casual either. "Mr. Carter," she said, "this is probably nothing to worry about, but we need to confirm some information in your file." I laughed a little. Sure. Did I fail the cookie test? She didn't laugh. She asked me to verify my date of birth, my address, and then my blood type. I told her what I'd always been told. "Oh, positive." There was a pause, like paper shuffling. "That's why I'm calling," she said slowly. "Your donation tested as different. We're seeing results that don't match what you reported." My stomach did a small drop. "So what does that mean?" "It could mean your previous records were wrong, or it could mean a lab error. We'd like you to come in for a repeat test." That was it. That was the whole call. No dramatic warning. No big explanation. Just a request to verify something. I hung up and stood there staring at my coffee machine like it had personally betrayed me. Then I did what any rational person does. I Googled it. I learned more about blood types that morning than I ever wanted to know. I read about genetics, inheritance, dominant and recessive traits. I read about how certain combinations can't produce certain outcomes. I don't even remember what made my mind go there, but it did. It slid into the thought like a knife finding a crack. Mason's blood type. I knew it because when he was born, they'd told us. Emily made a note of it in his baby book. I could picture it. A neat little line of handwriting. AB negative. I sat down at the kitchen table like my legs forgot how to work. I stared at the screen. I read the same lines over and over. Positive. AB negative. My brain tried to protect me. It started throwing up excuses like shields. Maybe I remembered wrong. Maybe the hospital typed him wrong. Maybe the blood donation center typed me wrong. Maybe the internet was oversimplifying it. I told myself it was a coincidence, a misunderstanding, a stupid, nerdy genetics problem that had nothing to do with my life. Because the alternative was too big, too ugly. It would mean everything I believed about my family was made of paper. So I went in for the repeat test. The clinic was quiet and bright, the kind of place that feels like it's always waiting for bad news. They drew my blood again. The nurse smiled, told me I was doing the right thing, told me it was probably nothing. I smiled back. I played along. I left. For the next week, I walked around like a normal man with a normal life while my mind ran in circles behind my eyes. Every time Mason called me Dad, my chest tightened. Every time Emily kissed me, my skin felt too sensitive, like I was wearing my own body inside out. The repeat test came back. Same results as the first. My blood type wasn't what I thought it was. It was a positive. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. Because with that one correction, the genetics math got even worse. I was suddenly a man holding a fact in his hand that didn't fit his reality. And when facts don't fit, you either change the facts, or you change your reality. I still didn't confront Emily. Couldn't. Not yet. I needed something undeniable. Something that didn't leave room for maybe. Then, months later, Mason got sick. It started as a fever. He was sluggish, glassy-eyed, unusually quiet. Emily wanted to wait it out. I insisted we take him in. Call it father paranoia. Call it instinct. I just needed him to be okay. At the ER, they drew blood. They asked the usual questions. I answered. Emily hovered. Mason cried and clutched my shirt. I held his small hand and whispered that he was brave. A nurse came back with a chart and asked, Dad, are you sure about your blood type? My heart stopped. I said yes. Then I corrected myself. No, actually, it's a positive. I explained the blood drive mix-up, the retest. The nurse nodded slowly. And Mom, Emily answered without hesitation. B negative. The nurse made a face I will never forget. Not dramatic, not judgmental, just puzzled, like she was looking at a puzzle piece that belonged in a different box. She turned the chart toward us. Mason is AB negative. The room suddenly felt smaller. The air felt heavy. My ears started ringing, like my body was trying to leave my mind behind. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. I just nodded, like I was processing medical information, not watching my entire life crack open. Emily put a hand on my arm. Is there an issue? No, I said, and it came out too calm. No issue. But my brain was screaming. That night, after Mason stabilized and we brought him home, I sat in the dark living room while Emily slept upstairs. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I stared at the wall and felt something inside me go cold and clear. I ordered a paternity test online. I didn't pick a cheap one. I picked the kind that comes in discreet packaging and uses language like legal-grade accuracy. I paid extra for faster processing. When it arrived, I hid it in the garage behind old paint cans like it was something shameful. I waited for a day when I could collect Mason's sample without Emily noticing. I hated myself for even thinking like that, but I did it. I swabbed the inside of my son's cheek while he giggled because it tickled. He trusted me completely. He looked at me like I was the safest thing in his world. That alone almost broke me. Then I did my own swab, sealed it, dropped it in the mailbox like I was mailing away my last piece of innocence. The waiting was the worst part. People talk about betrayal like it's anger, like it's shouting, slam doors, dramatic confrontation. But for me, betrayal was quiet. It was brushing my teeth next to Emily and looking at her reflection while wondering who she really was. It was pretending to laugh at her stories. It was watching her tuck Mason into bed and feeling my throat tighten because she looked like a mother, and mothers aren't supposed to do things like this. It was holding my son and feeling love so intense it physically hurt, mixed with a fear I couldn't name. What scared me most wasn't losing Emily. It was losing the right to call Mason mine. That thought haunted me like a shadow, because even if biology said no, my heart still said yes. And I didn't know what the law would say or what Emily would do or how this would end. When the email finally came in, "Your results are ready," my hands shook so badly I had to set my phone down on the counter. I opened it. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not unlikely. Not inconclusive. 0. I stared at that number until it stopped looking like a number and started looking like a sentence. This child is not yours. My chest felt hollow, like someone reached in and scooped out something essential. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone. I wanted to run upstairs and shake Emily awake and demand to know how long, who, why, how she could look me in the eye for 5 years and let me build my life around a lie. But I didn't. I sat down. And in that silence, something else grew. Not rage. Not even hatred. Resolve. Emily had taken my reality and rewritten it without my consent. She had made me a supporting character in my own life. So I decided I would take the pen back. I didn't confront her immediately. I got a lawyer. A quiet, competent woman who didn't flinch when I told her everything. She asked the right questions. She explained the process. She didn't promise me fairness. She promised me a strategy. I filed for divorce. I filed to disestablish paternity. Those words felt clinical, like paperwork, but each one was a blade. I also did one more thing. I found out who it was. Took less effort than I expected. Emily wasn't careful. She didn't think she'd ever have to be. There were old emails, old contacts, a name that appeared too often for someone who was supposedly irrelevant. A former coworker, a man I'd never met, a man who had a face that looked normal and forgettable, which somehow made it worse. I contacted him. I didn't threaten him. I didn't beg. I sent him a simple message. I know, and there will be a paternity claim. I asked if he intended to be involved. His reply was short and cowardly. He said he didn't want anything to do with it. That was the moment I realized Emily hadn't just betrayed me. She had gambled with Mason's entire future. Then came the barbecue. It was a Saturday in late summer. One of those days where the sun makes everything look warm and forgiving, like the world is conspiring to pretend nothing bad ever happens. Emily had planned it for weeks. Both families. Burgers, hot dogs, lawn games, laughter. She was in her element, moving around with a plastic tray of drinks, smiling at everyone, calling Mason her little man. Mason ran around with a squirt gun, shrieking, his cheeks pink from the heat. I watched them, and it felt like watching a movie I used to love, now knowing the ending ruined it. My parents were there. Her parents were there. Her sister. My brother. People who'd held Mason as a baby. People who'd toasted our marriage. Emily looked happy, carefree, and that almost made me laugh. At some point, as everyone settled into that comfortable post-food haze, Emily clinked her glass and said, "Before dessert, I want my husband to share something. He got asked to speak at a fatherhood charity event next month." People turned toward me. Smiles, nods, a few noises. Someone patted my shoulder. Mason wandered over and leaned against my leg. I stood up with my drink in my hand, feeling strangely calm. I looked around at all the faces that thought they knew me, and I began my speech. "I wasn't always sure I'd be a good father," I said. "I didn't have the best example growing up. I used to think fatherhood was about biology. Like, you share DNA and that's what makes it real." A few people chuckled like I was about to get sentimental. "I've learned something different," I continued. "Fatherhood is built. It's in the mornings you wake up early because your kid had a nightmare. It's in the scraped knees and the school pickups. It's in the stupid jokes and the bedtime stories you read even when you're exhausted. Emily smiled at me like I was doing great, like she was proud. I swallowed. I've loved being Mason's dad, I said. It's the best thing I've ever been. The backyard went quiet in that soft way people get quiet when they feel emotional. Then I let my voice cool, just slightly. Not angry, not loud, just clear. But sometimes, I said, you find out that the foundation you built your life on wasn't real. Emily's smile twitched. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. I held it up like it was just another piece of paper. I found out through a blood donation that something was off, I said. At first I thought it was a mistake. Then it came up again at the ER. So I did what any person would do when they feel their world shift under their feet. I looked directly at Emily. I got a DNA test. The silence after that was not soft. It was sharp. It was like the whole yard stopped breathing at once. Emily's face drained of color. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She stared at me like I just started speaking a language she didn't understand. I opened the envelope and took out the paper. Mason, I said gently, and my throat tightened, is not my biological son. Somebody made a small noise, like a gasp they tried to swallow. Emily whispered my name like it was a warning. Stop. I kept going. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm not here to be convinced. I'm not here to be manipulated. I already filed for divorce. I reached into my other pocket and pulled out another set of papers. And these, I said, holding them out toward Emily, are the divorce papers. You were served today, in front of witnesses. That matters. Her mother stood up so fast her chair scraped the patio. Emily, what is he talking about? Emily's eyes were glossy. This is insane, she said, voice shaking. Why would you do this here? I turned slightly, addressing the whole group again. Because lies thrive in private, I said. And I've spent 5 years living inside one. Emily's father looked like he might throw up. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My dad stared at the ground, jaw clenched. Emily tried again, louder. This is a misunderstanding. It's not. I cut in. And that was the first time my voice had any edge. And before you start rewriting the story, here's the part you didn't plan for. I paused. The biological father knows, I said. And he wants no involvement. That landed like a punch. Emily's knees visibly weakened. She grabbed the table edge to steady herself. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just felt the clean snap of consequence. I filed to remove my name from the birth certificate, I continued, which means you don't get to keep the life you built on my back. You don't get a husband, and you don't get to pretend this was an accident that somehow still benefits you. Emily made a choking sound. Please, she whispered. Not like this. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman I trusted, at the woman who watched me hold that baby and call him mine. At least this way, I said quietly, everyone sees who you are. Then Mason tugged my shirt. Dad? He asked, confused, small voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Every part of me twisted. I bent down, put a hand on his shoulder, and forced my voice to stay steady. Hey, buddy, I said softly. Go play for a minute, okay? I'll be right here. He nodded because he trusted me, because I was still his dad in his mind. And that almost crushed me more than the betrayal. When I stood back up, Emily was crying openly. Her family was in chaos, questions, accusations, denial. My family looked stunned, like they'd been dropped into someone else's nightmare. And I felt empty, but also relieved, like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally let it out. I didn't stay for the explosion. I walked inside, grabbed my keys and left. Later that night, my phone blew up with messages. Some angry, some supportive, some confused. Emily called me 12 times. I didn't answer. I sat alone in my car in an empty parking lot and stared at the dashboard until my eyes burned. The satisfaction people imagine with revenge is loud. It's triumphant. Mine was quiet. It was the knowledge that she could no longer control the narrative. She could no longer keep me trapped in a story where I was the fool who smiled and paid bills and tucked in a child that wasn't his, while she held the real truth like a secret prize. But here's the part nobody prepares you for. I still love Mason. That never turned off. Not for a second. And even though I filed the paperwork because I had to, because the law and the money and the future all demanded it, I knew the real war wouldn't be in court. It would be inside my own chest. Because now I had to decide what kind of man I was going to be. A man who walks away from a lie, even if it means walking away from a child he raised, or a man who stays in the child's life, even when the world says he doesn't have to. Emily thought she could cheat and still keep the life we built. She was wrong. But Mason didn't do anything wrong. And the cruelest part of all of this is that the person I wanted to protect most is the one who will be hurt no matter what I choose. All I know is this. That day at the barbecue, Emily lost the power to pretend. And I finally got my life back, even if it came back in pieces.